What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we have a good one for you today. It's hidden breakout players. This is definitely more of a sleeper style video, deep sleepers, but we're going to bring up a handful of players that we are much higher than ADP on that really a lot of people aren't targeting in the later rounds. Before we do get into the video, stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was which tight end with at least 50 receptions led the league in average separation. The correct answer was Tyler Higbee. DePaul Henry, you got this one right. As for today's stat of the day, which wide receiver ranked dead last in average yards after catch over expectation? So in other words, this player left a lot of yards on the field. Leave your answer in the comments section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. Also, guys, we are now in August. Fantasy drafts are right around the corner. We're only talking about a handful of sleepers in this video. If you want access to all of our sleepers, targets, busts, player breakdowns, rankings, and more, consider signing up for our draft package. It is loaded with information guaranteed to give you an edge in your league. If you want access to that, go to our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, link as always in the description box below. With that out of the way though, let's hop right into the video, and the first player I'm going to bring up is Anthony Miller of the Chicago Bears, and I know he's not going super late. We're going in order of ADP. He's the earliest being taken on this list, but he's still being drafted at wide receiver 46, which completely blows my mind. His ADP hasn't climbed at all, and this is a player who not only has upside to perform day one, but this is also a player who has some serious breakout potential. I know if you were an owner of him last year, it was really frustrating not knowing when to start him. He mostly found himself on the waiver wire, but towards the end of the season, he was not only one of the biggest waiver wire adds, he was one of the best performers in the fantasy playoffs. So when asking ourselves, why did he perform better towards the tail end of the season? And there were definitely a couple factors that played into it. A, he does have shoulder injury issues. He had surgery last offseason on it. Shoulder injuries are also what ended his season early in the final game of the year, and his recovery is likely to have played a major role in the lack of snaps to begin the season. Anthony Miller saw no more than 62% of snaps until week 5, and only had 7 games in the entire year in which he actually eclipsed 75% of snaps. In those games where he did play a high amount of snaps, he performed extremely well. Those were the games that garnered him attention off the waiver wire. Those are the games that may have won people weeks in the fantasy playoffs, and that's because while he was on the field, he was being heavily targeted and he was producing. In games in which he did play 75+% of snaps, he averaged 8.7 targets per game, and a 7-game sample size is not small whatsoever. Yes, these games were a bit peppered out throughout the season, but those 7 games did come through an 11-game span, so it wasn't as if his production was impossible to predict. His production in those 7 games, if spanned out through an entire season, would have amounted to 82 receptions for 1,074 yards and 4.5 touchdowns. Yes, I know the touchdowns are not on the high end, but this is the Chicago Bears offense, and last season, it was one of the worst in the entire league. Anthony Miller is definitely a guy who's no stranger to the end zone. His rookie season, he caught 7 touchdowns on just 33 receptions. So if this offense does see any improvement, whether that be under Nick Foles, or if Trubisky picks it up, Anthony Miller could be in line for a similar workload with potentially more upside. His snap increase did also coincide with Taylor Gabriel, who also went out with injury from week 13 on, and Taylor Gabriel is no longer on the team. Chicago, in return, drafted a receiver in the 5th round, then added 2 other weapons in Jimmy Graham and Ted Ginn. Need I remind you, Ginn is 36 and Graham will be 34 by the end of the year. Where he's currently going in drafts, it's virtually a no-risk investment. We're shooting for maximum upside in the later rounds, and when drafting a receiver as a back-end wide receiver 4, potentially wide receiver 5, you won't be disappointed leaving him on the bench for a few weeks until you see that he's healthy and he's getting a high percentage of the snaps. Let's move over to the next player, and we are going deeper outside the top 140, and it's N'Keal Harry of the New England Patriots. We keep waiting and waiting for the ADP to adjust. It seems that even though Cam Newton has signed with the team, a lot of the offensive weapons for the New England Patriots are still coming in at a discount. An offense led by Cam Newton, coached by Bill Belichick, has the tools to not only be a solid offense or a decent offense. I mean, if we're talking upside, theoretically, Cam Newton, if he still has the juice, could come out and have a really respectable season. Now, understandably, Julian Edelman should lead this team in receiving, and honestly, where Edelman's going, he's a pretty solid value as well. We'll have to see where he actually lands on draft day, but N'Keal Harry is the wide receiver 57. That largely has to do with how little he did on the field last season, but we simply did not see enough of him to already deem him a bust. He only had 24 targets throughout the entire 2019 season, starting just 5 games. He still does have first round draft capital. The team will be motivated to get him involved, and we don't know with 100% certainty that this offense is going to run exactly the same as it did under Brady. Making massive changes to the offense could be difficult in these type of times, but knowing just how good Belichick is as a coach, you know he's going to adapt to get the most out of his players. Lamar Jackson didn't come in and play exactly like Joe Flacco. No, Harbaugh built the offense around his strengths. I definitely expect Belichick to do the same, and throughout Cam Newton's career, he has always targeted the bigger receivers. Think Greg Olsen, Kelvin Benjamin in his better days, Devin Funchess, he had his moments. All of these receivers have one thing in common. They're big targets. Cam Newton not known to be accurate. N'Keal Harry is 6'2", 228 pounds, boasts an 81st percentile catch radius, and is most comparable to Allen Robinson. Now, a player with a comp to Allen Robinson definitely fits the skill set better for Cam Newton from what we've seen in the past, much more so than a player whose strengths come more down to precise route running and timing. Now, this is not to bash Julian Edelman. Like I said, he could be a value where he ends up falling in drafts, but considering N'Keal Harry won't even be drafted in every league, you have nothing to lose by taking a shot on this player. We're moving over to a running back, and I know it's not a sexy pick, but it's Darrynton Evans of the Tennessee Titans. Currently, Darrynton Evans is just inside the top 200, coming in at 197th overall, running back 60. Don't get me wrong, Darrynton Evans is unlikely to be an every week starter, but what running back are we actually getting in this range that has any sort of guaranteed workload? Darrynton Evans actually does. He is filling in for Dion Lewis, who is now a New York Giant, and although it seemed like Derrick Henry never left the field, Dion Lewis still played on a substantial amount of snaps. We're talking over 1/3 of the snaps, and that's about where we can pencil in Darrynton Evans for the 2020 season. He's definitely going to be playing a more complementary role, but he is going to be seeing time on the field. His touch totals will definitely be weighted more on the reception end, which are much more fruitful for fantasy. And unlike players like Nyheim Hines or Tariq Cohen, guys that really can't move up the depth chart if a player above them got injured, Darrynton Evans actually could fill that role. Now, he is criticized for being a bit undersized, but let's be real, the Tennessee Titans really didn't care about that when they had Dion Lewis leading the backfield in 2018. In fact, while leading this backfield, 6 of his first 9 games he received 15 or more touches before Derrick Henry really took over. While Darrynton Evans does get knocked for being 5'10", 203 pounds, Dion Lewis is 5'7", and weighs in the 190s. When Derrick Henry did miss a game last season, Dion Lewis got 15 rush attempts, also notched a reception in the passing game. If anything were to happen to Derrick Henry, there's absolutely no reason they wouldn't give Darrynton Evans a chance to take lead in the snaps. Derrick Henry, he's not injury prone by any means, but his touch totals are going to eventually add up. While he didn't quite reach that 350 touch total apex, he did lead the league in rush attempts with 303 carries, and rush attempts are much more taxing on the body than receptions. One other thing to keep in mind, this is also a team that overperformed in 2019. Let's say a lot of those things that went their way, especially their efficiency in the red zone, doesn't come to fruition in 2020. Let's say this team does end up falling behind in the division, potentially lacking playoff aspirations. The team is not going to have a ton of motivation to load up on carries for Derrick Henry. So if that type of scenario does end up panning out, we could see the snaps and involvement for Darrynton Evans increasing even with Derrick Henry healthy and on the field. The final player we have is so hidden, he will probably not be drafted in 90+% of leagues. Currently, he's coming off the board 273rd overall, wide receiver 90, and it's Jalen Hurd of the San Francisco 49ers. Many of you may remember the name Jalen Hurd. He was drafted in the 3rd round last season as a wide receiver out of Baylor, and unfortunately, we never got to see him have any regular season action. An injury did keep him sidelined for the entire season, so this is what's going to be essentially his rookie campaign. One thing to know about Jalen Hurd is he isn't going to jump off the board as an athletic monster. His actual position that he plays on the team may even change from a wide receiver, running back, tight end hybrid. I know that sounds crazy, but prior to him going to Baylor and playing a wide receiver role, he was actually the running back for Tennessee. He played alongside Alvin Kamara and actually had more rush attempts than Kamara on both of Kamara's seasons in Tennessee. All that may sound pretty normal until you realize that Jalen Hurd is 6'4", 220. He never truly had the prototypical running back build, but found success transitioning to wide receiver at Baylor. The reason why this is so important is because Jalen Hurd had so much success because he is exceptional with the ball in his hands and in space. Kyle Shanahan knows what he's doing. Take a look at all of the receivers on this team. You have Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and now Brandon Ayuk. These players all have one thing in common. They're all dynamic playmakers. They perform their best with the ball in their hands out in space, and they're going to be getting most of their production in yards after the catch. Over 50% of Deebo Samuel's yards came after the catch, and Brandon Ayuk's skill set falls right in line with exactly what the 49ers are looking to do. Jalen Hurd is exactly that type of player as well. We got to see a glimpse of it in the preseason. I definitely recommend you taking a look at his preseason highlights. Then you'll get a feel for the type of player he is. With Deebo Samuel having foot surgery and potentially not being ready to start the season, and even if he is, it's unlikely he's going to get a hefty amount of snaps. Other receivers will be gaining an opportunity for that reason, because why rush back Deebo Samuel, one of your most dynamic playmakers, especially when the 49ers expect nothing less than a repeat Super Bowl appearance. The coaching staff has already come out and outlined their intentions for him to have a big role in the slot this season, and we also can't rule out the potential for a tight end designation. We've seen in the past players like Jalen Samuels being a cheat code for being able to be played in the tight end slot while playing the running back position. Well, Jalen Hurd's the type of guy who can take snaps out of the backfield, perform if heavily targeted, and with the shortened offseason programs and lack of preseason, Brandon Ayuk, who's going over 100 spots earlier, may not be as prepared or as knowledgeable with this offense, considering Jalen Hurd had an entire season getting an ability to better understand the playbook. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. We really hoped you enjoyed. Let us know who your hidden potential breakout players are. And if you did enjoy this video, please hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.